just like honey, sweet to taste on burning lips. Wanna lie beneath the water, feeling icy fingertips. Soothing nectar to my body, wash the image from my eyes. Dirty streets of hungry people, drink the water, dry your eyes. First not look at the reflections, listen to the music made. Drinking water's ease the mind, thoughts of you begin to fade.
Good evening, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It's Saturday night, August 12th. We are streaming from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you're here, thank you for being here. If you're new to the channel or the Facebook group, please consider subscribing. We do not monetize this channel in any way. We're here just to commiserate and share information amongst each other. Somehow lighten the load of the heavy politics that are going on right now across the country. So we certainly do appreciate if you would subscribe to our channel. If you're not familiar with the Facebook group page, just head on over to Facebook, do a search for Divided We Stand group page. You'll find us, and that's that. Now, before we begin, Anthony mentioned the volume levels. If the volume levels between Dave and myself are off when we go on to the next scene, just make sure you tell me. I'll look at the comment section and I'll try to fix it up. I think last time it was a little bit off. So thank you. And tonight's show, I think the basis of tonight's show, at least where I wanted to go with this, something Dave had said last week. It was something very simple but powerful. So much so that I kept thinking about it all week. And that was the idea that politics have changed in America and we may never get back. And all week, I've seen so many different events which show this, as you see in the description, this Cold War occurring within our society right now. So I have a lot of little video clips. Dave's got a lot of ideas that he'd like to run through all of you, and we'd love for you to participate. Remember, we're not here to give advice to anybody. We'd like to be as sincere as possible about this in this channel. All we are trying to do, again, is to commiserate and share information. We're not the experts. We're just having an exchange here. We're normal people, average people, just trying to get through this mess, which is really, really messy. Okay, so again, thank you, and we'll move on with the show. And thank you for being here. All right, so without any further ado, let me change scenes here, folks. Excuse being a bit slow here, but let's wait. It's Dave Price. How you doing, Dave? I haven't seen you for a week.
I don't know how I'm doing. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
I
Can you hear
can't
me?
see me.
Now that's interesting.
Not that people need to see me. I'm not.
Well,
I'm
hold on.
supposed
Let me
to be
just see if I can. How about this? Does this help you out? Hold it. I was in a preview mode. Does that help?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Once
Okay.
again, thank you for not knowing what you're doing. It's always great to start a show. I have so much
right.
confidence in your technical ability.
This is the
Look,
beta program I'm using. I shouldn't use the beta program, Dave. But what
How
happened?
many times have I told you not to do that? Okay. Why?
Well,
do you do
beta,
that?
I love
Let's start there.
because-
No, let's start there tonight. Okay. We'll move it a little bit there. Okay. Now, beta. Why would you use a beta without testing it?
Because I'm an idiot and I like to take risks. And there's nothing like going live and taking a risk. The benefits outweigh the
You can
possible
rationalize
shortcomings.
rationalize anything.
Yeah, I'm acting like Trump now, aren't I?
Yeah,
No,
kinda.
actually, he would be much, much worse. But I saw what happened. They went from what's called preview mode, where you're seeing how it looks like out there. And apparently, when you put it in preview mode, you can't see a thing. And you need to see what's going on because there's going to be a lot of commentary.
Okay.
So real quick, Dave, right before we begin, Anthony, are our volume levels between Dave and myself all right? Or anybody else out there for that matter? Just a quick comment will be really helpful.
Question is anybody listening? And I see the numbers they are, but yeah, because we sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, we can hear certain things that you can't. And sometimes you can hear things that we can't, and sometimes you can't hear and we can't hear. So it's always nice to get a verification that those that are viewing / listening are able to both see and hear.
Actually, on my end here with the sound levels, I'm actually set a little bit less than you, Dave. But
Okay.
we don't know what your setting is on your mic, so sometimes that might change it. But you're all the way up. I've got you all the way up. It says here your volume is a bit higher.
as well as I should be.
All right, I'm going to bring mine down a little bit. How's that? I think that's what I'm going to do. So you won't have to worry. How about that, Anthony? Does that sound about right now? And then we'll move on.
Okay. So
Good, Dave.
no, I'm just saying another normal, abnormal week in politics in America. Certainly a lot to talk about. You said you have some video clips.
Some video clips.
So,
right?
Brian, why don't you get started and I'll chime
Sure.
in, and then I've got a couple things I want to talk about later in the show.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, first I want to take us to David Feldman for a second. Dave Feldman is an American comedian who has a channel which is very political and a little bit like our channel in a certain sense, or maybe we're a little bit like his channel, though we don't really have the comedy, so to speak. But I want to take a few clips, and I want to thank Sandy for introducing me to him. So, yeah, I'm going to go to the web right now. And here we go. All right, so I place this between here. All right. All right, so we're going to look at this first clip. It's about what he believes the Republicans are about. Okay? And then we'll look at another clip short. Just simple stuff. And then Dave, I want to get, run this by you and tell me what you think, accurate or not. Okay? So let's take off the sound effects for a second. And hopefully the volume will work.
Evidence that the
Can you hear Dave? Did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
Justice Department and the FBI was weaponized by Barack Obama. But if you have any evidence of a crime committed by Donald Trump, we're not interested. We're trying to
You'll
prove
hear it in a
that
second. It just comes up. Where
Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton politicized the Justice Department. So please keep any dirt you have on Donald Trump to yourself. So, yeah, they're upset because they know that David Weiss is going to look into Hunter Biden and find nothing, the same way Durham found nothing on Obama and Hillary. The Republicans hate America. They love Donald Trump. They fear Donald Trump more than they love America, and that's how fascism works. We are talking about fascism. This is now a cult around a violent man, Donald Trump, who offers nothing other than self-aggrandizement and the satisfaction, satisfying demented people's bloodlust. That's
Okay, so let's just first kind of take that short clip there, Dave. Basically, number one, he's calling the Republicans fascists. Number two, he said something interesting. He's saying that the Republicans fear Donald Trump, and he's building up a bloodlust. I'm not so sure I disagree with that.
Well, I would have issue if he was saying that the Republicans fear Donald Trump. I think what he meant to say is Republican politicians fear Donald Trump.
Or the constituents.
The people who fear Donald Trump are the never Trumpers on the Republican side, so they don't count. I think what I find, somewhere between fascinating and abhorrent is the fact of the lack of elected Republicans. I don't follow every state, but it appears to be pretty much every state, certainly at the national level, who just refuse to take Donald Trump to task for anything. What was it as of last week? What did I say? 78, I believe 78 indictments, or 78 charges, not 78 indictments.
Right.
Incorporated in the charges. It doesn't mean, now again, let's certainly we're talking about the American jurisprudence system. Just because you're indicted does not mean you're guilty. However, it means there is enough evidence to look into setting up some sort of trial to determine guilt or non-guilt. Trump is, I believe, is the leader of a cult. I don't know what else you call it. Again, it's not the first cult in America. It won't be the last. But it is, it is what it is, and it is a cult. If you look at the definition of a cult, you follow a leader, right? And what I find interesting about that too is the leader doesn't have to be right. Remember around Y2K, remember the number of religious leaders who said, end of the world, end of the world, end of the world, right? And not just religious leaders, others, some went to mountains, some, well, of course, Y2K comes and it's absolutely nothing. It's just a flick of a year to a year. But what I think Trump has mastered, maybe even better than some of those leaders then, is the fact of distorting even the bad part of the story. And what I mean by that is those religious leaders and others who were talking about Y2K, but let's start with the religious leaders. They said they were able to turn that around and say, no, it didn't happen. Do you know why? God listened to our prayers.
Right.
Now, how can you, whoa. You said it was going to happen. You didn't say, unless God listens to our prayers. You said it was going to happen. And, Trump does things like this. Well, I only hire the best people. Well, how come you let them go, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mentioned Hunter Biden, right?
Right.
We now know that there's going to be a special prosecutor looking into that.
And he mentioned Weiss there, the one that they're calling for a special counsel. They get it, and now they don't even like that because there's really nothing there.
Well, of course, that's the problem. There is no there.
It's McCarthyism too.
Then you can't put a there, right? But what I do think maybe America should be starting to prepare for is the fact that for the first time in American history, if it is a race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, both will be under a cloud of legal action. Now,
right.
granted, Hunter Thompson's his son. There's been no evidence of Joe Biden. Republicans have linked it there, but that doesn't mean it'll be like Hillary's emails. Okay, it'll be a thing. Now, maybe by that point, Brian, maybe by the time 2024 rolls around, everybody will have made up their mind and it won't matter. But
well, my problem now, Dave.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying because I'm just looking at what Feldman said about we just really basically discussed the Republican Party as a cult, and that in itself might seem innocuous, but we are now looking at this whole aspect of violence since January 6th of 2020, and now it seems like they're openly making calls related to this cult. Now, I want to show you 3 very, very quick videos. One with Matt Gaetz, and then 2 with Michael Flynn that just are going to, basically be attached to this whole idea of a Trump cult. But the problem is, it sounds like they're ready to take the violence route when necessary if they can't get what they want, or at least talk about it. Okay, so this was Matt Gaetz recently. Okay, now you may not be able to see it really, really well, but you'll be able to hear it. Okay, and that's, I guess, the only important thing.
Mr. President, I cannot stand these people that are destroying our country, that are opening our borders, that are weaponizing our federal law enforcement against patriotic Americans who love this nation as we should. We are having a great time at the fair. We love standing with you, but we know that only through force do we make any change in a corrupt town like Washington, D.C. And so to all my friends here in Iowa, when you see them come for this man, know that they are coming for our movement, and they are coming for all of us. And as hard as you see him work, I need you working 10 times harder, 100 times harder. We're going to win Iowa. We're going to march for the nomination, and we're going to save the greatest country in town.
Okay, see there, it reminds me of Giuliani saying trial by combat. It's actually alluding to violence when he says force.
It's not alluding, it's calling for it.
Right.
If you listen, only force can clean up the mess in Washington. And of course, by implication, the mess in Washington is caused by liberals and Democrats and anybody who's not a supporter of Donald Trump. Because, again, there are some things to do in politics. Like, go back to a person who gets a lot of credit. I don't know if she deserves it or not. Liz Cheney, right? She did make some stands against her party, and she's been removed. What I find so fascinating is she had the most conservative voting record of any person in Congress. And all she did was question Trump and then say no to Trump. And suddenly she is persona non grata. Back just to that clip. I mean, that's pretty scary. Only force can. First of all, that's not true. Voting can clear up the mess in Washington, D.C. as it can in any community.
Right.
But
if they don't win, that's that. I mean, it sounds like they're preparing for something.
Well, I think they are. And, I find it interesting that they talk about the other side, Antifa. Antifa is not even a group.
Right.
It's there, it exists. Antifa exists, but it's not an organization.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's certainly not violent. That's for sure.
For the most part, they aren't. I was able to spend some time in with some Antifa people in Washington D.C. over the years, and they're not. Black Lives Matter. The protesters there were not, unless police confronted them and things got out of hand. So really, when you think of only force, you're not hearing the Democrats say that, right?
Absolutely not.
And they're not completely in power. I mean, they do have the presidency, but
Right.
the House is
But they do
controlled by
have,
the president.
he does have somewhat of an option that intimidates them, and that is he is the commander in chief. And that's I know I'm jumping into future conversations, but Ronnie's brought this up, is that, is Trump, or there are elements within the Republican Party that are actively trying to work within the military, because, you still have Michael Flynn's brother, who did absolutely nothing during January 6th. Not that he was, the commander in chief, but, there is a worry that there are still elements, there are still Michael Flynn's out there. And in fact, I want to show him really quick, Dave, if you don't mind.
Okay,
because
sure.
He's talking.
Mr.
a bunch of
Flynn's
crap
always
here.
good to look at.
Okay.
For war. And right now, we're at war. We are at war. We're at war with that, what Jason laid out to you. We're at war with a justice system. We are at war with a justice system. And, and I joke sometimes and I go, is there any FBI agents in here? Leave now. But, this.
Okay, and then there's one short one here. Let me get rid of that one here. This is Michael Flynn. He's talking to the pastors of the country.
The United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence are based primarily on the Bible. They are. They are.
I said that's of course news to me, Dave, that the U.S. Constitution is based on the Bible. This is, again, you could say, well, this guy's a lunatic, but it's scary.
If you're going to say the Constitution is based on the Bible, I'm going to say the sun is blue. Neither statement is true.
Right, but it doesn't have to be correct, as we've discussed this before on previous shows about propaganda. They don't have to be correct.
No.
They just have to simply do the Goebbels thing of just put it out there over and over and over again until people say, oh,
yeah.
You know what? It is the Bible.
Well, I suppose in an ideal world, no one would comment on the United States Constitution without having read it and indeed understand it. I don't think that's the case. It would be interesting to know how many people in America have read the entire Constitution once. I have no idea. I know it would not be 100%, and I would assume it would be closer to 10% than it would be to maybe even into 50%. I don't know figures on that. But it's very hard to discuss this. So when someone like Flynn comes along and says a misstatement or a lie, whichever way you want to classify it, that the Constitution is based on the Bible, and people don't know what the Constitution is or based on or what it says, then they begin, like you say, Brian, they begin to accept it as truth. I was reading something the other day that was kind of interesting. It was an article about truth. And basically, the premise was nobody knows who speaks the truth now, and nobody believes their truth is false. And what they mean by that is, there's certain things in life that are true. Certain things in the world that are true, as we know them. We get a great debate about, where somebody's dream or in somebody's book. I'm not talking, but if life is what it looks to be, there are certain things that are true. And the Bible and the Constitution should not be linked. Separation of church and state is really one of the bases of America. And as Anthony points out there, fascist hate mongers, it is interesting how the problem with the Bible, and there's so many, is there's something in there for everyone, and even if they're not, you can misinterpret it. Now, that's not what Flynn's doing. Flynn is throwing the whole Bible, right?
Right.
I mean, he's just saying this thing, the Constitution, is based
You're not even saying that this guy's actually religious. You're just. I assume what you're implying is that Flynn is using the Bible to influence the people in front of him.
Of course.
Or am I wrong? I don't want to speak for you.
No, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, look, if you knew that, okay, let's follow the logic of Flynn, and there's logic there. All right, if the Bible and Constitution are linked, and you're not following the Constitution, what else aren't you following? The Bible, right? And therefore you're against God, and you're ungodly, and boom, and we go. Franz points out they call themselves patriots, but they support authoritarian. They conceive as a patriot as someone who feels as they do. And I think, we got to keep that in mind. These people, we look at them as crazy, but they believe it. I mean, they don't look at themselves as crazy. And until you look at yourself and say, oh, I'm not sure about this, you're not going to change your mind. What I found disturbing, or one of the things I found disturbing about Flynn, was this war. We're at war. Well, I think we need to be more careful, and I've used it too. I'm not blameless. We have to be real careful when there are violent acts, such as January 6th, associating the word war with domestic politics. Would you agree, Brian? I mean, it's a we use the sports terminologies for politics. We use military terminology, battleground state. But I think maybe we're at a point now where we maybe need to rethink that, because
I think that the forefathers, obviously that was on their mind as protect, from foreign and domestic. You know what I mean? So they probably had an idea of, if anything, it's probably more likely to happen with domestic because it's continual. There's always forces, within the country that are trying to upend the status quo, and this is one of the things, because you always suspect it's going to be, we have to protect ourselves from Russia or any foreign enemy for that matter. But it's much more dangerous when you're walking down the street. It's much more dangerous. It's more immediate when you're in school and there's a bully there. That's the real problem, and that's a problem everywhere. But I don't know. I mean, it's a very confrontational language, which is now seemingly acceptable to say we're at war. I mean, just say we're at war with ourselves and making us the enemy.
Well, in a war, you got to have an enemy, right?
Got to have an enemy, right?
The enemy is the other. In this case, maybe Donald Trump's trying to make up for getting out of Vietnam with his bone spurs. I don't know.
Maybe. But Dave, and I'm gonna show you another quick video. Relates to Flynn, and this is what worries me about the military. That should Biden win, where does Trump go, knowing that the commander-in-chief is the commander-in-chief and he can send out the troops? Now, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but let's look at a recording here and this is David Feldman, by the way. Thank you, Sandy. This is David Feldman talking about a recording in Kenosha. Now, there was something that happened this week in Kenosha. A black man was accosted by police who was just carrying had his son with him, and wrong place, wrong time. Obviously if you're African American in Kenosha, but we're going to look and see what happened prior to the BLM protest. Because you were mentioning BLM, that's nonviolent. But let's just look and see, what had happened within that police department that night. And again, this won't be very long, but you'll see what I'm talking about. And this is what worries me from a national level about the Flynns out there.
House was acquitted in 2021, but he killed the virgin Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old virgin, Kyle Rittenhouse shot 2 Black Lives Matter protesters, killing them and injuring another. This was in 2020. Here is video of the Virgin, Kyle Rittenhouse, being welcomed before he shot the place up. Here he is being welcomed by the white Kenosha police moments before he opened fire. Now, here we go. This is a 17-year-old, remember, this is a 17-year-old white virgin brandishing an AR-15 during a Black Lives Matter protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Nobody asked him to be there. But, you know, he's white, and the Kenosha police are white, and so they see a white 17-year-old virgin brandishing an AR-15, and they automatically assume he's trustworthy. Watch this video. It's my understanding that in Wisconsin, it is illegal for anyone under the age of 18 to own or carry a firearm. I think you have to be 21, but if you're a 17-year-old virgin like Kyle Rittenhouse, I don't think you're allowed
Should come up any second
to
Dave.
carry an AR-15. But watch this video. See how the police welcomed Kyle Rittenhouse and thanked him. Thank you, white virgin, for keeping Kenosha safe from Black Lives Matter protests.
Thank you for your cooperation. We understand what you're doing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, you're welcome.
Get the fuck together. You guys protecting that building?
Yes! This is our business.
Excellent. Thank you.
Back by the gas station again.
Hey, thank you guys. You need water? Seriously. Guys, far right. You need water.
We need water.
We'll throw you one.
Thank you.
All right, come on, guys, let's get out of here. Damn. Which way should we go?
Great. Let's go get yourself a break, couple. Thank you.
Now, my first point is this, Dave. I'm going to go back to the regular scene for a second. First of all, you notice the police are in those armored vehicles. And you've got the Kyle Rittenhouse, because he wasn't the only one there. The Kyle Rittenhouses, they're the ones that seem to be doing the job out there. It's sickening because they're basically, the police are the audience in a certain sense. And they're helping them out. They're saying, you go ahead and you do our job. As he said, the 17-year-old virgin, whatever. It's monstrous that this kind of thing would happen. But what I'm trying to make an analogy is, what if this cold violence, again, let's suppose we win the election, which is an assumption that we can win the popular vote, and then they lose, and then maybe they lose in the courts. Can they do this kind of crap? I mean, is there a Kenosha type element in the military where, you know, they give a wink and a nod to these lunatics with, you know, the AR-15s, and they're probably 25 million of those things there. This is, again, I'm speculating, but this worries me because this, I think, was so obscene to see. I mean, I knew a lot of things were going on, that they let him do this and that, but they were encouraging it. They were encouraging it. And, you know, I'm mad enough at Bruce Schrader and the judge who put his thumb on the scale. But this really, really worries me because this sounds like they knew ahead of time that these fellows were coming. These 17-year-olds who want to basically be vigilantes. Does that worry you in terms of the future, that this type of mentality could spread?
Yes and no. And I'm not waffling here. Let's do the yes part. There is no question that there are super patriots, wrong definition of patriots, that there are super Trump supporters, that there are super racists in police departments across the nation, and indeed in our military. However, the question becomes, what would they do? What would they do in the scenarios that you posted? All right. I'm going to turn around with a couple questions to you. And again, Brian, you're just doing the everyman thing here. You're not Brian, but you're every person answering. If the Republican candidate, whomever it is, at this point, it appears that Trump is Trump is the leading candidate. barring something knocking him off. If he is elected, will there be police and military action? Do you think there will be if Trump is elected?
Meaning, after he's elected, that he will take some.
I didn't know. Will there be military action if he wins?
No, not as long as Biden. Biden knows he's going to play by the Constitution.
And there you
we
are.
play the game the right way.
There you are. Okay. There's certain premises that you have to work under, and one of the premises is that once an election is certified, the results should be real. Now, we've never had it. We've never had this kind of question circulating at the national level with the presidential race, and this was not the closest race ever in history. There's other. I've mentioned before in the show. I think Richard Nixon, who leaves a lot to be desired, was a man and a president. One of the greatest things he did is not contest the results of the.
But this was a dangerous vote. In other words,
1960. I'm just saying, right? He did not. And there's a good chance that there were enough corruption in Chicago with Mayor Richard Daley,
Right. Absolutely,
that Nixon could well have won that state, and that would have been the difference. Okay, because it was one of his one-state elections. Then you've got Bush and Gore. Again, that came down to just Florida and the whole mess in the Supreme Court. But Gore just said, okay, that's it. Now, because Trump has planted it in his followers' mind that he is the victim, but he doesn't say that. What's so interesting about him, Brian? He says, oh, no, they're not after me. They're after you.
Correct. He's personalizing for them.
What they're doing to me, they really will do to you next week. Well, so I think we established. So the question becomes, if a Democrat wins, will there be violence? And I think that's more of a possibility than if a Republican wins, that there'll be violence.
Absolutely. Especially if the Democrat wins and they have no other recourse.
You mentioned the military. And I just finished reading a speculative book about a president who goes rogue. And what the military does. And the book was fiction, I understand, but I think this is a basic premise. Maybe I'm naive in this, but I think it's true. The military follows the Constitution, not a president, even though the president is the commander-in-chief. So did they have a civil war amongst themselves, in the military? My biggest fear about the military would be if Trump were to win, how he would try to use them, both domestically and in foreign instances. Anthony put something up that it struck me in the comments from the video you just showed. I wish the gentleman, what's his name again? David who? The video you showed.
David Weiss? Oh, you mean David Feldman?
Video.
David Feldman, right? He's a comedian.
David Feldman.
Right.
I know he's a comedian, but he was in a serious subject there. I wish he hadn't used that 17-year-old virgin.
Right. I think that was because he went. It's kind of funny, but it's not. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Help.
I mean, yeah. I kind of turned me off to an issue that I kind of agree with him on. And I think. Well, I'll just leave it at that. I wish he hadn't done that. But it was clear that was his intent. He was putting in there whether he was trying to be humorous.
I think it was an intent to spread that out, so to get at Kyle Rittenhouse. He's trying to humiliate him.
Well,
he's angry. I mean, he's shown it in his way. He plays it very cool. But because when you attack somebody's physical features or something like that, you're trying to humiliate them. And
that's something that I really think we shouldn't do. Okay,
right.
I'll be quite honest with that. Okay, I'll give you an example. One of the candidates who will be appearing in the first Republican presidential debate will be the former governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie.
Right.
Now, you were a teacher in New Jersey. You still are. I was a teacher in New Jersey. And Christie was governor, and there were some funding problems. And we went to Trenton, teachers across the street, to protest. And one of the protests, a lot was directed at Governor Krispy Kreme rather than Chris Christie. I refused to participate in that because it's name calling and it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And I can't speak for Chris Christie, but I think I'm not a Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high person.
Well, I still think you can humiliate somebody without doing the physical attribute thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying now, because I think that just leaves you open too much. So I wish you hadn't done that. Other than that, there's some scary names of people you brought up. Flynn, definitely scary. Gates, definitely scary. The Kyle Rittenhouses that are out there, definitely scary. But again, this show is kind of coming around to the violence. And, when do you use violence?
Well, that's what I want to ask you. I'm going to ask you this, okay? Because I people have talked about this, and I want to show it. I want to get your take on this. I didn't mention anything before the show to you on this day, but I do want to show it to you. I have to admit, when I saw it, it was exhilarating at some point, because I hate seeing anybody picked on, but worse when I see it happen to African Americans. But we're going to watch this.
This is the Alabama incident.
Let's watch it for you. We see an African American man. He's one-on-one with somebody, and now you see these other ones coming after him. So now he's got 3 people on him, 4 people, 5 people, all white, 6 people, 7, 8. Now there's a steamboat right near there, and some people start jumping off and swimming across, and the boat got closer, and you're going to see what happened after this. I'm going to see if I can make this bigger for you. If this works, you'll tell me, dude.
They wrong for that now. That boy swimming his ass over there. Yeah.
Does that make it better?
A little bit.
That boy finna help that boy.
Because the tables turn, you'll see. Some people come to defend him.
Shit, they tore his ass up. They tore his ass up.
Now the people who attacked him, they're starting to run away.
He ain't finna do nothing. Arrest their ass. Oh, Lord.
It gets pretty intense here, so you'll see.
Drop down that man.
Now these people who attacked him, and they're now in their boat, they start seeing African Americans come over. Now they're not so bold.
Look at him, look at him, look at him.
Now watch what happens.
Red back ass. Man, they couldn't do that with that man. They jumped off while you had to sit on him.
It happens in about half a minute to start. You'll see.
I'll sleep down there. Like shit, man. That's my boat right there.
Go get through here.
What the hell? Yeah, these white folks jumped on these black men at work.
You'll see it. It's going to come up.
Get on the zipper cycle, the Marriott trying to come through, and the man was telling them to move their boat because the Marriott couldn't dock so the folks could get off, and everybody on the zipper cycle, we just wait. Why these folks swung on and jumped on this black man? Baby, the crew member jumped off.
So here they go now. The people coming off the boat, the steamboat. Now they're going after those guys.
They ready to move some. They ready to move some.
He ready to run.
Yeah. What's up?
I was told a minute ago.
Yeah. Woo! 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 They scared. Look at them. They scared. Woo! Beat their ass. Woo! Oh my God. Woo! That what you get. That what you get. That what you get. Oh, tie her ass up. Ooh, she whooping her ass. She better put her in the water. Oh!
In the water.
In the water. Tie his ass up. Cause y'all were wrong. Do some. Boop, boop,
Okay, I'll stop it there because it does get a little more intense. Now, is this a situation of fuck around, find out, or is it more than this?
It's
you know, I don't like seeing people getting beaten up.
Brian, first of all, it's Alabama. Okay. It's a Confederate state still. My grandchildren live there. My son is a professor at the University of Alabama, so I feel somewhat safe in discussing that state. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen anywhere else. What I think that video proves very quickly and very dramatically, it's a danger being a black man or woman in America. End of tale. Same
and
thing.
If that Kyle Rittenhouse would have been there, you know what would have happened.
Tying it in to Kyle Rittenhouse.
Right.
So that's my first. It's clear to me that way. Put up the comment that was just there, Brian. I want to comment on that. White people, boats, alcohol, do the math. I walked on a dock at Lake of the Ozarks. Okay.
Everybody knows about the Ozarks, that's for sure.
Well, no, but just got a point. What bothers me, okay, I'm not real sure of the value of that video. I'm really not. First of all, I could, screaming and whatever, but I'm saying it shows something, but will it change anything, Brian?
If that, you see, that's what I'm saying. Does that make it worse? I don't know. I mean, I was exhilarated because I'll be quite frank with you. I was so angry because, you see a black man being beaten up. It's in Alabama, as Jeff says. And it's kind of like watching a bully getting his ass beat. So all of a sudden, when the steamboat came in, these guys who were so bold, they weren't so bold anymore. And this goes to show you, it's kind of like what Kyle Rittenhouse would not have done if the others had AR-15s. Now, I'm not trying to endorse the response, but I've been tired of seeing innocent people get pushed around so many times. And if the government's not going to protect them, somebody's got to do something. And finally, somebody here, you saw what happened. That, again, it was the fuck around and find out happened, and it was on video. And these guys were not bold. And maybe it's a message that we don't have to become violent, but they have to know that there's going to be a response from people, and they may not win. And again, it's a very, very treacherous territory to discuss because, the minute you start doing this, then, it could go in the wrong direction. Because, again, these are armed people in the end. And I don't know that we can defeat that,
Well, that happens, it happens every day. Maybe not to that extent, but it happens every day in America somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. There's something similar to this, a black-white confrontation. America's racist. America is racist, okay? Now, that's not to say that there aren't racists in the Democratic Party. I think it would be pretty hard to be a racist and be liberal by definition. Mm-hmm. It's certainly racists can be Republican, they can be conservative, they can be Trumpers. But I think, again, what just strikes me is that the two videos, the Rittenhouse video and this one, they share in common confrontation, right? Racial confrontation and violence.
Right.
That's what they share in common. The Rittenhouse was 2 dead, I believe. This was no fatalities. And it also points to a danger of social media is great. YouTube is great. But this is to all our listeners and viewers. When you see something, make sure it is what it is. I'll give you an example. When I was working at the museum, I'd be right on the first floor, which was the entrance, and I saw this gentleman barge in without paying, and which is you're not supposed to do, right? Mm-hmm. So, and he started running, and that's kind of a dangerous sign. So they got security guards, and they tried to stop him, but they couldn't do anything with him, and they took him down to the ground. All right. Now, the second floor and the third floor it was open air. So on the second, third, fourth, and fifth, you could look down to the lobby. And I was just watching dozens of people with their cameras filming the video. Now, from one perspective, from one perspective, this incident looked like the police were completely at fault, right? Security was. It wasn't. You had to see the whole thing develop, and that's one of the problems with social media. You usually don't. The clip, it doesn't. I mean, it's, people don't walk around and say, "Oh, I've got to get the beginning of this." They usually jump somewhere in between. Yeah,
and that's what I was saying. They're lucky there are no guns. The good side won, but not that you want it to be that way, because it's vigilantism. But you would have expected. Why couldn't the police have gotten there earlier? I mean, it seems like they came after.
What? Well, you said you identified the police as doing nothing in Kenosha. So,
well, if anything, they endorsed and promoted.
And Kenosha, Wisconsin is not Alabama. Shifting gears a little bit here, if I could.
Sure.
There's a website that I highly urge people to go to. It's a news organization called Axios. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes, absolutely, Axios.
And it makes no bones about it. It's a liberal.
Yes, they are on MSNBC every once in a while.
Right,
reporters from Axios.
I thought this was interesting. We have a Republican debate coming up, right?
Correct.
Trump will not appear. That's the way it appears now, right?
Apparently, yeah.
So that number one is kind of interesting, that the leading candidate will not be there, and for the majority of the Republican candidates have either supported Trump, tried to out-Trump Trump, or at least they're kind of hands-off. You've got Pence, who's commented negatively about some of Trump's actions recently, and Chris Christie, who is running the Trump Never campaign, right? Mm-hmm. So, the question becomes, will they attack each other? Will they attack Trump? Blah, blah, blah. But Axios raised 5 questions that I'd like to call attention to that they would ask if they were running the debate. So, Brian, I'm going to do this, make a couple comments on them.
Sure.
I'm going to ask you if you think these were good questions. So, first question, should Trump step aside if he's convicted? That's a good question, right? Now, you say, no, Republicans don't want that, but there's a poll, and remember, every time I talk about polls, I say, be careful, because too many people are polling, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a poll out there that only half, according to a Reuters poll, only half of the Republicans would not vote for Trump in the general election if he were convicted of a felony. Wow. That speaks to the cult, right? I mean, that
right.
Doesn't matter. What they're saying is, I don't care. Donald Trump's my guy. I'm going with Donald Trump no matter what. I think the Republican candidates, I think it's a legitimate question to ask them. Should Trump step aside if he's convicted? I'd like to know what they feel. I'm not going to vote for them, but I'd like to know what they feel. Second question, would you sign a federal 15-week abortion ban if passed by Congress? Abortion is still a hot topic. We saw it this past week in Ohio, where actually the pro-abortion forces defeated the anti-abortion forces in a state, and part of it is the question came after. Says, does this mean Ohio's changing? Maybe it's.
I don't know about that. I live there.
They said, well, yeah, but they say it could be a swing state. Well, would you then, if from what you've told me about the state,
that has to be the most important thing to the voters, and I don't know that is.
Well, it was at that point. What you have to do is stitch together that constituency,
I hope so.
And support it that way. So, I think you do need to tie down candidates on abortion because of what the Supreme Court. Okay. Then you've got, should the House impeach Biden? Asking the candidates now. Again, that would kind of, the purpose of that question, why I think that's a good question, is it gives them a feeling, or it gives you a feeling as a potential voter, of how they would stack up.
We know why they were impeached. There's nothing on Joe Biden. You can say you don't like him
Right.
as a president, but there's nothing on him. That's just a smokescreen.
Well,
that
then,
Trump
then
wants.
let's get them. If that's the truth, let's get them to deny it. I mean, they're a right-wing organization like Fox is not going to ask him those questions, but are they good? Now, this one is interesting. Should the U.S. force Ukraine to give up territory to reach peace settlement with Russia? I find it just so ironic that in my lifetime, the rather dead than red party, the Republicans, have now turned to the pro-Russian party.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing, on two levels. First of all, that they were so
point.
anti-Russian, and secondly, in this one, I think the aggressor is probably Russia. I don't think Ukraine.
And they're willing to cut aid to them.
Right.
Many of them are.
And the fifth question and final that they suggested, I think it's a good one. Should the U.S. use lethal force at the border? There are more and more calls about this wild gangs and things coming over the border, about drug cartels. I think you have to be very careful. There again, lethal force is violence. And again, we're looking at America that's very violent. And how violent should we become? So that's the questions they had. Is there anything else you'd want to know from the candidates, Brian, that they didn't? I think that's a pretty good list. Or are you just such that it doesn't matter what they say?
Well, I mean, I know this is going outside of this, but we've seen what has happened in Maui. We've seen the issues in China. We've seen this summer we've had in the Southwest. Are we going to accept that we have to do something on climate change? That
No,
has
we're not.
to be.
No, we're
Well,
not.
I know that, but the Republicans are not. The Democrats, at least, are ready.
But unless you're going to get that sounds really just like, what the fuck? Let's give up. But I don't know.
I mean, we don't know, Dave. If, for example, I've said this before, but when we get into the end of August, beginning of September, when the hurricane season really reaches its peak, and we don't even know how long the peak will be because now the oceans are warmer. You don't know how. I mean, look, I don't know anything about meteorology and how that's going to work with the cold and the warm meeting and all this kind of stuff. But there is more energy. We know that, and if there is a situation where, we get a hurricane with 200-mile-an-hour winds and it just destroys an area, what will it take to make people understand? Now, Maui, people with a lot of money, and we're talking $5.5 billion of damage. Our insurance costs are going to start going up because of this. And I'm getting sick of paying for the rich, because this is initially a rich man's problem. I don't say man, but I'm saying it because we're talking about the coast, because this is where the initial, point of impact, the original points of impact occur. And where do most of the wealthy people live? It's on the coasts. And that means there's going to be a lot of destruction to these people's homes. And that means it's going to affect insurance. So that's where it's going to be an immediate impact. And even states like Texas, where you have Abbott, or states like Florida, where you have DeSantis, the first thing they're going to do is it's going to protect their own. Not only because it's their state, but they're going to protect the rich. But at the same time, they're going to back the fossil fuel industries like Manchin does. Okay, this is about backing the fossil fuels industry. This is why Republicans are saying there's no such thing as climate change. We know that most of them know that there is climate change. What's really happening is they're backing the fossil fuel industries. And somehow the question has to be phrased in such a way where you can say, okay, will you back this, if this happens? And if you're not willing to, do you deserve to accept that FEMA money? I mean, it's infuriating. But somebody's got to phrase it in a way, Dave. Again, we're talking about humiliation, not physical humiliation, to humiliate them. So, and you're not getting it from Biden.
Well, I think it's interesting, those questions. I said they're good questions. I don't know if they get to the heart of what bothers me most about America. In no particular order, it would be, what the hell are we going to do to make sure that our grandchildren have a world in terms of an environment? That's something that I think everybody, even if you're not planning on having grandchildren, you owe it to those who do to take stands. Another area that it doesn't address is education.
Right.
The education.
Well, PragerU is making a stand right now.
I'm sorry?
PragerU. It's not even a university. Dennis Prager, that religious fuck who, is trying to speak for Christopher Columbus and Frederick Douglass.
Well, I mean, there's two levels we're in trouble. We focus on the Florida level, I call it, where, get crazy things like, well, slaves, they're going to put in their history course in Florida. Well, slaves did learn some, pretty good things in slavery. Yeah, right. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, they built their bodies too. They got real strong.
Yeah. Whatever, right? But the other part is just a general idea of education is in trouble. I mean, it is. You can't find teachers. You can't. Things have changed so much. I mean, kids. One of the things that I don't have an answer for, as an educator, I left without answering it, is when you have Sesame Street, as great as Sesame Street was, and it was, electric company. Okay.
Right.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. How does a teacher compete when kids watch that, before they even get into school? I mean, it's really hard. How do you bring the social media in and make it relevant when kids just want to do, they just want to do TikTok? And I understand that. That's what I would do too. I'm not putting them. It doesn't, it also doesn't address these questions, don't address, and I think this election should have something to do with it, is violence/guns in America. Why do we have so much violence? Well, one of the reasons is because we have so many guns. Why do we have so many guns? Because I believe personally,
it's a propaganda. It's fear of black people. That's what it is.
Well, you know what?
It's displaced, and we know it. You and I know
two
that.
Other things to support that. Back in the '60s, late '60s, California was going to institute some gun control, right? And they didn't want to do it, right? Just like now,
right?
But a large segment of the Black Panthers showed up at the State House with guns, and within 3 weeks they'd passed a bill looking at guns. So again, you could do that. Or Chris Rock, I think one of the funniest sketches he ever had when he talks about violence and guns. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. It's really pretty clever. But he says, you want to stop violence? I can stop violence. Between people. He said, make each bullet cost $10,000. You got to really hate a motherfucker to put $10,000 worth of bullet in him. And that's true. I mean, the guns are
guns are just rooted in racism. It's just when you get to the weed, it is racism. They throw the fear out there. The NRA loves it. If it wasn't for African Americans, the NRA wouldn't have the power. Because who has the guns? The people who don't live in certain areas.
Yeah.
They've probably never seen a black person in the neighborhood. Some of these places.
And I want to kind of wind down my participation tonight with this. You brought it up. Somebody mentioned earlier, one of the comments was Liz Cheney pledged to do everything that she could to stop what's she doing. And I mean, that wasn't posed to us. I mean, it might have been a rhetorical question. I don't know. I would assume that she will maybe wait until there's a Republican nominee. I don't know that.
She's been awfully quiet of late.
And that's one of the things I think, we hear the noise. We saw that violence in Alabama. We see Kyle Rittenhouse. But sometimes it's the silent people I wonder about. The NRA. When's the last time you've heard anything from them?
Well, nothing publicly have I heard anything from them.
There you are. I mean, so where did that go? Why? They figure it's over, the battle's it's over.
I don't think that they have to. I mean, I think it's probably in their best interest just to shut up. They've got lunatics. I have seen a lot of NRA stickers on the back of trucks.
And that's probably it. They don't need, like you said, Brian. They're silent. They're silent. They're silent, but they don't need it because they're supported in other ways.
Right.
And one of my favorite silent people is Ivanka Trump. Not that she would have any bearing on it, but I did think at one point she might have had been the only person in the universe who could have had any type of leveling effect on her father.
Didn't happen.
I know,
At least
but
ostensibly it didn't happen.
no. And so did she just find out that she couldn't do it? And
She could have made herself a hero or heroine, however you want to put it. She could have. He could have been a hero to this country if he had been a normal human being. He became president. He should have been. He had opportunities to become great and do something, and he had to be the asshole that he was, and she did nothing.
well, of course, he couldn't help being the asshole he was because he was, and will always be a narcissist. And a narcissist, well, you have to have some probably narcissistic traits to put yourself out and run for office, right? You can't,
Right. You have to have that.
Introverts usually don't do that, but it's there. Well, Brian, my time, your time, we're winding down, so I'm going to close out with this. Just thank everybody who tuned in live. If you didn't, you're seeing it on YouTube later. Again, we don't have all the answers. And I will give a teaser for next week. One of the things, if somebody's wondering what will they talk about next week, my subject will be the use of trans warfare in sports. Some interesting things are happening in an offshoot of the LGBTQ world, and basically it's in trans people. So Brian, peace, over and out.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you very much. And everybody, we want to thank you for stepping by tonight. Please, if you can, again, please subscribe, become a member of our Facebook group page. We would appreciate that. We're not looking for anything but camaraderie, and that's the truth. We don't expect to have, a large following on YouTube. We have fewer than 200 members, subscribers. That's okay. Again, and I want everybody to understand where I'm coming from on this, is that Dave and I, just philosophically, we just simply want to have a sincere channel. There's, the very fact that we're not monetized means we're not going to have a lot of subscribers. I mean, and in a certain sense, you don't want to have too many anyway, because look, we can have this dialogue amongst ourselves fairly easily. We haven't had any trolls, and that's kind of the nicest thing. But that being said, we want to build something up, but we're not looking to be anything but sincere in what we're doing. And again, and I said this at the beginning of the show, never have Dave and I ever asked people take our advice. At least not that I know of. I wouldn't know why you get advice from me, because I'm thinking I'm the last person. I can barely trust my own decision. So why would I expect you to even, agree with or do anything that I say? Don't. Okay. But I want to become better at just having the conversation and being as sincere and real as I can. And I am myself, of course. But that's what I want out of this. I know this is what Dave wants out of this. Dave doesn't care. He doesn't look at the numbers, of what we're getting with views. The more the better. But that's not our goal. This is not something that we, aspire to get, 10,000 views. We just want to be able to communicate with each other during these times, because it's ugly out there. It's ugly on so many different levels. We can lose the democracy. We all know that. But it's all intertwined, folks. I know, Sandy, you mentioned, it's hard to keep up with this kind of thing, especially with the politics. But I've never seen any of the major topics today, whether you're talking about fascism, authoritarianism, climate change, it's all like one big ball. It's all interdependent with each other. It's just kind of like our lives, how you and I both, all of us, I don't have to tell you this, but we are shaped by our environment and what we were brought up with. I was watching this show last night. I finished all of the Black Mirrors, but there's an interesting show on Netflix. It's entitled "End of the Fucking World," and this thread of evidence about how people psychologically deal with the world is basically, at least in the case of these two individuals in the show, it's from their upbringing with their parents. You see how their lives were so affected by their parents who may have loved them in some way, but they didn't know how to raise them. And there's a difference between loving a child and raising a child. But anyway, getting back to the point, all these behaviors, whether it's on the show that I watch or whether it's Donald Trump, we're dealing with something that is so interconnected. My behaviors, the things that I do and believe in, is a mix of all the things that have been around me. It was not generated from within, it was from the outside coming in. And in that sense, I think there's an understanding that if we are going to solve these problems, we first have to understand, how we're getting here, and is there an exit? Because I don't know. Think it's as simple as going up, confronting these people and saying, "Well, look, you believe this because of this." So that they put themselves above that because they're actually looking at the situation as though they don't realize they're in the movie when they are in the movie. But we are able to look. This is, I think, what makes a difference between a thinking person and somebody who's just taken in by propaganda, like my cousin, is that they don't realize they're part of the movie. It's kind of like that Black Mirror episode, Joan is Awful. It's not until a certain point she realizes that she is part of a movie that she's starring in. You have to kind of see this thing. And it's very disappointing in a certain way, because when you kind of see this, and I see it again in myself, I am not excluded from the situation, but it's going to be very difficult to jump over the hurdles, because changing anybody, it has to come from the outside. And we can say this till we're blue in the face and say, well, how do they believe this with Trump? We've been saying this for 5 or 6 years. It's deeper than that. It's so much deeper. And I think the world needs a good psychologist. And again, these people are within, the you talk about a simulation. It doesn't matter if it's a simulation or not. It's kind of like this, if you think of it, some people say, well, I don't want to eat engineered corn or something like that, right? But it happens in evolution anyway. I mean, the way the changes that occur in the environment, things will be genetically mutated anyway. Anything's engineered. So the simulation is going on. The question is, can you recognize it? And this is what we're fighting against. Okay. And does the good side win? I don't know. I don't know how we take care of it. But one thing for sure is we will, touch wood, try to be here next week to discuss this and see where we go, because a lot of things can happen in 1 week these days. Just ask anybody who lives in Hawaii. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe I'll be having a hurricane show from New Jersey before the end of October, because I'm right near it. Yeah. All right. Keep breathing, folks. And what I mean by that is take 3 deep breaths You're not alone. And I know I'm not alone. And just keep on keeping on. Keep on trucking. All right. Peace out. See you, everybody. Thanks.